6 years ago, one magical night changed everything. He was a powerful CEO. She was a simple girl. By morning, she was gone, leaving only memories. Today, he sees a little girl with the same birthmark he has. His heart freezes. Could she be his child? In Tia's story, we uncover the truth behind that one forgotten night. How fate brings them face to face after 6 long years, and the shocking secret that connects them forever. Stay till the end to see how one moment of love turned into a lifetime of destiny and redemption. Before we talk about the shocking truth that will soon turn this COO's world upside down, let's step back for a moment and understand how a single night could carry a secret for 6 long years. A single night, a secret kept, a mark that changes everything. It sounds like something out of a fairy tale, or maybe a tragedy disguised as one. But behind every story that looks magical, there's always something real. Something human. Something that hides in silence until time decides to reveal it. He was not just any man. He was a name everyone in the city knew, a man who built an empire with his bare hands. His decisions shaped futures. His words could move markets, and his signature could change lives overnight. But in all that power, there was a loneliness he never spoke about. Because success can fill your pockets and still leave your heart empty. Before the fame, before the money, before the boardrooms and flashing lights, there was a moment, one soft, ordinary moment, that changed the direction of everything. He didn't know it then. He thought it was just a distraction, a single spark on a rainy night when life felt too heavy and the world too cold. But destiny has its own plans. It hides lessons inside people, and sometimes those people disappear before you understand why they came into your life in the first place. That night, he met her, not at a grand party, not through a business deal, but by pure accident. A flat tire, a quiet street, a small cafe that smelled of coffee and hope. She wasn't dressed in diamonds or silk. Her clothes were simple, her laughter soft, and her eyes, they carried stories she never told. She didn't recognize him as the man whose face filled magazines. And for once, he didn't introduce himself as the CEO. They talked like strangers who had known each other for years. Maybe that's why it felt so easy. Maybe that's why it hurt so much when morning came, and she was gone. Before we get into what really happened that night, and how her disappearance became the biggest mystery of his life, you need to know something about him. He wasn't the kind of man who believed in signs or fate. He believed in numbers, in control, in results. But that morning, when he woke up alone, he felt something he couldn't explain. A hole somewhere deep, where logic couldn't reach. He tried to forget. He buried himself in work, building bigger, faster, higher. He convinced himself it was just a moment, nothing more. But life has a strange way of remembering what we try to erase. 6 years later, when he saw that little girl, everything he had buried came back in one heartbeat to Sammy's eyes. The same smile. And then the mark, a small, crescent-shaped birthmark near her wrist. The same one he'd had since childhood. It wasn't just coincidence. It couldn't be. Before we talk about how he confirmed the truth, how he followed the clues, how he faced the woman who had disappeared from his life, let's talk about what this mark meant to him. It wasn't just skin deep. It was a symbol, something his late mother once called the family sign. Every man in his family carried it, and now he was staring at a child who had it too. He didn't know whether to smile or break down. Could it really be his daughter? If yes, why had the woman kept it secret? Why had she vanished without a trace? And why, after all these years, did fate bring them together again? A single night. A secret kept, a mark that changes everything. The next few days were a storm. He couldn't focus at work. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that child's face. She looked so much like her. He tried to convince himself it was imagination. But the more he tried to escape, the louder the truth whispered. Before we reveal how he finally traced her, you need to understand what kind of man he was now. 6 years had turned him into someone harder, colder, less trusting. He had learned that the world wasn't kind, but somewhere inside, That night still lived. The only night when he had felt like a human being instead of a machine. He sent people quietly to find out who the girl was. No noisy, no media, no drama. He just wanted the truth, and the truth came back wrapped in disbelief. The woman's name matched. The timeline fit. The girl's age, exactly 6. Every answer only raised more questions. Before we move deeper, before the truth bursts open, imagine what it must feel like to see a mirror of your own past running around in the form of a child. To know that you might have missed her first steps, her first word, her first laugh. The years that should have been filled with bedtime stories, hugs, and birthdays. All gone in silence. All because of one night that neither of them ever spoke about again. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to demand answers. But the moment he saw that girl again, playing in the park, laughing with her friends, something inside him softened. He didn't know her name yet, but he felt the connection instantly. Like a forgotten melody, his heart remembered before his mind did. He began to follow quietly, not to invade, but to understand. He saw how she helped others, how she spoke kindly even when no one was watching. It reminded him of her mother, kind, soft, but strong in silence. That was the moment he stopped doubting. That was the moment he knew. Before we talk about how he approached the mother again, that intense, emotional first meeting, stay with this feeling for a second. Imagined carrying success, fame, and money, but realizing that the greatest treasure you ever had was the one you lost without knowing. That's what makes this story more than drama. It's a mirror for anyone who ever lost something precious, only to find it again when life least expected it. And that's why you need to watch till the end. Because the truth that comes next doesn't just reveal who the child belongs to, it uncovers what love really means when time, pride, and silence try to bury it. This isn't just a story about a CEO and a girl with a mark. It's about forgiveness, fate, and the moments that rewrite who we are. Stay till the end to see how the truth comes out, and how one forgotten night turns into a lifetime of second chances. Before we talk about the girl, before we talk about that fateful day when the truth hit him like lightning, let's talk about the man himself, the one the world calls a perfect success story. He's the CEO of a big company, a name people whisper in admiration and envy. His empire stretches across cities. His signature decides the fate of hundreds, maybe thousands. He's the man who never sleeps, the man whose calendar is always full, and whose smile rarely reaches his eyes. Every morning begins the same way. A cup of black coffee, unread messages from investors, and meetings stacked like dominoes. He has power. He has money. He has everything the world promises to those who never give up. And yet, his heart is silent. It beats, but without rhythm, because success, for him, became a cage made of glass. Beautiful, but cold. Before we go deeper into how he built this empire, imagine this. A boy born in a small town, watching his father lose everything to bad decisions. He swore he would never be weak, never depend on anyone, never let emotions slow him down. That's how he learned to fight, not with fists, but with focus. While others played, he studied. While others slept, he worked. He believed that if he became powerful enough, he could protect himself from pain. And it worked. For a while, he became the youngest CEO in his industry. Magazines called him the visionary. People wanted to be him. They copied his words, his style, even his silence. But the truth no one saw was simple. He had no one to come home to. His house was big, his desk always clean, and his heart empty. He built walls around himself, not out of arrogance, but fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of needing someone. Fear of being heard the way his father once was when his mother walked away. So he filled the gaps with work, numbers, and late-night calls. Every deal he made was another brick in the wall. Before we talk about how one night cracked those walls, let's step into his world for a moment. Picture him sitting at the top floor of a glass building, lights of the city stretching far below. Everyone down there dreams of being up where he is. But if they could see inside his mind, they'd realize it's quiet. Too quiet. He often stares at the skyline, wondering why victory feels so lonely. Why Applause sounds hollow when there's no one beside you to hear it. He tells himself that feelings are distractions, that love is a weakness, that emotions make men careless. And yet, deep down, there's a part of him that still aches for something real, something unplanned, something that can't be bought. He had one mistake. One night. A night that didn't fit into his carefully built life. A night that made him feel human. Before we reveal what truly happened that night, understand this. He wasn't the kind of man who fell easily. He didn't believe in chance encounters or fate. Every move he made was calculated. Every word, rehearsed. Every risk, measured. But life, as it always does, finds the cracks. That night began like any other business trip. A conference, a speech, polite conversations that meant nothing. But it ended differently. With a pair of kind eyes he couldn't forget. With laughter he hadn't heard in years. With a warmth that reminded him he was still alive. He didn't plan to meet her. He didn't plan to feel. And when morning came, she was gone, leaving no trace except the feeling that something inside him had shifted. Before we talk about her, let's stay with him for a bit longer. The man who woke up alone, holding on to a memory that didn't belong in his world. He told himself it was better this way. He had no time for distractions. He had a company to run, deals to close, targets to meet. But as the years passed, that memory began to haunt him quietly. It would visit at night when the office lights dimmed and the city slept. It would whisper in moments of silence. What if he never spoke of it to anyone? Not to his board, not to his friends. If you could call them that. He built higher towers, earned louder praise. But inside, something remained unfinished. His employees saw him as a machine, efficient, cold, unstoppable. But they didn't see the man who sometimes paused before signing papers, his mind drifting back to that one night. They didn't see how his hands trembled ever so slightly when he passed by the place where they once met. He worked harder, thinking maybe success would erase memory. But the human heart doesn't work that way. It hides what it can't handle. And waits. 6 years. That's how long it waited. 6 years of routine, power, and silence. 6 years of pretending that the emptiness was comfort. And then one afternoon, a single glance shattered everything. Before that moment, his life was predictable. Every meeting ended with results. Every project with applause. He had control over every corner of his world. But fate doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't send warnings. It simply arrives, disguised as a little girl with a familiar birthmark. The CEO everyone admired, the man who thought he had mastered life, suddenly found himself face to face with the one truth he had been running from. No amount of power can protect you from destiny. He had money, yes. He had influence. He could buy anything, except the years he missed. Before we talk about how he handled that discovery, you should know what kind of man he was deep inside. Because behind the expensive suits and the calm tone, there lived a heart that once wanted something simple. Love without labels, connection without fear. He buried that part after that night, convinced it was weakness. But when he saw that child, that buried part woke up. It didn't care about logic or reputation. It only knew one truth. She looked like him. The people around him noticed the change before he did. Meetings that once lasted hours ended early. His tone softened. His focus shifted. The man who had ruled boardrooms with iron calm now sat in silence, lost in thought. His assistant once said, "He looks like he's waiting for something." And maybe she was right. Maybe, deep down, he had always been waiting for the universe to return what it once took. He didn't know it yet, but his perfectly controlled life was about to unravel. Not because of failure, but because of truth. A truth that had been walking the earth for 6 years, laughing, playing, living completely unaware that her existence could rewrite everything he believed about himself. Before we move to that part, remember this. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't heartless. He was just a man who made one mistake and paid for it with silence. And that mistake, that single night, was about to return, not to destroy him, but to teach him something power could never buy. Before we talk about the day he saw the little girl, before the world flipped upside down, let's go back, 6 years back. to the night that changed everything. It began with rain, the kind that blurs the city lights and slows the world down. He was driving back from a late meeting, mind full of numbers, hands tight on the wheel, when his car suddenly stopped. A flat tire on a quiet road near the edge of downtown. He wasn't used to waiting. People usually waited for him, but that night, for the first time in years, he was alone. No driver, no assistant, no umbrella. He stepped out, annoyed, cold, and tired. And that's when he saw her. She stood near a small cafe that was still open, holding a tray, cleaning tables under the dim glow of yellow lights. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't pretending. Just real. And maybe that's what caught him off guard. Before we talk about how they met, picture this. A man used to being noticed, suddenly being invisible. She didn't recognize him. She didn't know his name or his world. And in that small moment, I found peace in her simple kindness, in her smile that didn't ask for anything. He walked into the cafe, mostly to escape the rain, but something about her made him stay. She asked if he wanted coffee. He nodded, silently watching her work. Sleeves rolled up, hair tied back. A small scar near her wrist. She moved with quiet grace, not for attention, but out of habit. And when their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them. Before we dive deeper, remember, he was not a man who believed in destiny. But that night, even it cooled in tea. Explain why his heart suddenly slowed down, why he felt seen for the first time in years. They talked. Not like a CEO and a waitress, just two people, sharing stories, under the sound of rain. She spoke of dreams she had once chased and lost. He listened, really listened, without interrupting. For once, he didn't need to lead, or control, or prove anything. It was just two souls, meeting where they were never supposed to. Hours passed like minutes. The rain softened, the cafe grew quiet, and somewhere in that silence, something fragile bloomed. Before we talk about how that night ended, it's important to know he wasn't looking for love. He didn't even believe in it anymore. But when she laughed at one of his dry jokes, he felt something he hadn't in years. Warmth. He offered to drop her home when the cafe closed. She refused at first, polite but firm. Then the rain started again, heavier this time. She smiled shyly and agreed. The drive was quiet, not awkward, but calm, the kind of silence that feels like music. She told him about her life, her struggles, her small apartment, her dreams of studying again someday. He told her nothing about his own life. He didn't want to ruin the moment by reminding her who he was. For once, he wanted to be just a man, not a CEO, not a brand, not a story. They reached her street, a quiet lane with flickering streetlights. She thanked him and turned to leave, but something made him stop her. He asked, softly, "Can I see you again?" She paused, smiled, and said, "Maybe." Then she disappeared into the rain. Before we talk about what happened after that, remember this feeling, that thin line between hope and reality. He went home that night, but his mind didn't rest. He replayed her words, her laugh, her eyes. He had met hundreds of people in his life, but no one had ever left this kind of echo. The next evening, he went back to that cafe. She wasn't there. He asked the owner, who said she had quit that morning. No forwarding address. No contact. Nothing. Just gone. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. He searched quietly, through people, through places. Nothing. It was like she had vanished into thin air 6 years ago. A chance meeting. A night of magic. She vanished by morning. He searched. He didn't find her life Mobidon, but not for him. He thought it was just a memory. A strange, beautiful dream that didn't belong in his world. He buried it, told himself it was better that way. Maybe she had her reasons. Maybe it wasn't meant to be. Before we move toward what destiny planned next, let's stay in that space. The silence that follows after someone disappears. Without goodbye, he returned to his empire, but something inside him had shifted forever. He stopped smiling in photos. He stopped staying out late. He stopped believing that he could feel something real again. Every now and then, he'd pass by that cafe, only to find someone else working there. He'd stand across the street, hoping to see her face through the window. But she was never there. The place that once felt magical now felt empty. Years turned the memory soft. He convinced himself it was just a story his mind made up to survive loneliness. But late at night, when the rain fell the same way, he still thought about her. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear. The way she said his name softly, without fear. The way her presence made the world feel lighter. He thought time had erased her. He thought he had control again. But life docente, forget what es, written in its script. Before we talk about how she reappeared in his life, in a way he never imagined. Understand this. He didn't realize that the night he thought was lost had created something that would one day call him Dad. That one night, accidental, innocent, human, had left behind more than just memory. It had left behind life. A small heartbeat that would grow for 6 years before crossing his path again. He didn't know it yet. He didn't even suspect. To him, she was still a ghost of the past. Someone who had walked in, changed everything, and vanished before he could ask why. And that's where destiny waited, in silence, in time, in the space between what was lost and what was meant to return. Before we talk about the moment everything changed again, we need to step into his world. The world he built after that night. 6 years had passed, and he had become a name everyone in the business world respected. He was the man who turned losses into profit, who could save a company with a single decision. The newspapers called him a genius, the youngest CEO to cross $1 billion mark. But behind the success, there was something no headline could see: silence. Every morning, he walked into his office surrounded by glass walls and city lights. He greeted people. He nodded. He gave orders. Everything looked perfect. Everything sounded powerful. But deep inside, it was all noise. Empty noise. He had everything money could buy. A mansion that overlooked the skyline. Cars that waited for him even when he didn't plan to go anywhere. A wardrobe filled with suits that fit perfectly but never felt comfortable. Still, when he came home at night, there was no laughter. Just the ticking of the clock and the hum of the city outside. A filled his calendar with meetings. He filled his nights with business dinners, with parties he barely noticed. He surrounded himself with people, but never felt connected. He told himself, this was success. This was what life was supposed to be. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, he caught himself thinking about her. He couldn't even remember her face clearly. Only fragments. The way she smiled when she thought he wasn't looking. The warmth of her voice when she said goodbye. The strange calm that wrapped around him that night. The kind that comes once and never again. He told himself it didn't matter. That one night couldn't mean anything. But the truth was, it had left a mark, one that success couldn't cover. Before we talk about how fate came back into his life, let's look closer at how he changed over the years. He became colder, sharper, almost mechanical. He started counting numbers more than emotions. He didn't laugh much, didn't cry at all. He built walls around his heart higher than the walls of his company. People admired him, but no one really knew him. His employees said he was disciplined, focused, unstoppable. Investors said he was made of steel. But when the lights went off, when no one was watching, he sat by the window, thinking of what he lost without even realizing it. There were moments that haunted him. Birthdays that passed without joy. Awards that meant nothing. Even when he signed million-dollar deals, there was a small, quiet ache he couldn't name. He thought it was loneliness, but it was something deeper. It was the echo of a connection he once felt and never found again. Before we move to what happens next, imagine this. A man who can buy anything but peace, who can command hundreds of people but can't control his own heart. He often looked at families in the park on his way to work. Fathers holding hands with their daughters, little girls laughing, their voices floating in the air. And sometimes, for reasons he couldn't explain, He slowed down to watch them. It always left a sting, soft but deep. He told himself he didn't need anyone. He convinced himself he was better alone. But the truth was, he had built a life so full of success that there was no space left for love. And yet, somewhere in the back of his mind, he still wondered where she went. Did she ever think of him? Did she even remember that night? He never tried to find her again, partly out of pride, partly out of fear. Maybe he thought it was easier to pretend it never happened. Before we continue to the moment that shakes his world, we must understand the weight he carried. It wasn't just ambition. It was guilt. The guilt of not remembering her name clearly. The guilt of letting something pure slip away because he was too focused on tomorrow. He used to go to the same hotel every year, the one where that night had happened. He said it was for business, but deep down it was for memory. He'd sit in the lounge, order the same drink, and wait. He didn't know what he was waiting for. Maybe her face. Maybe closure. But every year, he left alone. His assistant often asked him, "Sir, do you ever rest?" He always smiled and said, "Rest is for those who stop chasing." But what he never said was, he didn't know what he was chasing anymore. Success had lost its meaning. Power had lost its taste. And yet, life went on, one meeting, one deal, one lonely night at a time. Before we go to the part where everything changes, picture this man, at the top of the world, but still searching for something invisible. He didn't know that destiny had already begun moving. Pieces behind the scenes. He didn't know that one small girl, with a familiar birthmark, was about to walk into his world and turn everything upside down. But for now, he kept building his empire. He kept pretending that the past was gone, because to him, it was safer that way. He didn't realize that the past doesn't stay buried forever. Sometimes, it waits quietly for the right time to return. And when it does, it doesn't knock. It walks straight in. Before we talk about how his world turned upside down, we need to step into an ordinary afternoon that became unforgettable. It wasn't a day of big meetings or breaking news. It was just another business event, one of those charity functions he attended because his company sponsored it. A sunny afternoon. Crowds of families, children running around, laughter echoing. The kind of sound he had long forgotten. He stood near the stage, talking to board members, nodding politely, doing what was expected. His eyes, tired from years of numbers and screens, drifted across the park. And then, he froze. Before we talk about what he saw, imagine this. A little girl in a white dress, chasing a butterfly. Her laughter cut through the noise. Soft, light, free. Something about that sound made him turn his head. He didn't know why, but his heart reacted before his mind did. He kept watching her. She tripped, got up, and laughed again. The same kind of laugh he hadn't heard in years. And then, for a brief moment, the sunlight touched her arm. That's when he saw it. A small, faint mark, just above her wrist. The same mark he had carried all his life. He blinked, thinking it was a trick of light, but no, it was there. Clear. Identical. His breath caught. His chest tightened. He touched his own wrist, feeling the mark that had been with him since birth. And suddenly, time slowed down. Before we talk about what he did next, let's understand what went through his mind. He wasn't a man who believed in fate or miracles. He believed in logic, numbers, facts. But in that instant, nothing made sense. The world around him faded. All he could see was that little girl, running, smiling, innocent, and that mark. He felt something. He hadn't felt in years emotion. Real, raw emotion. It wasn't business. It wasn't control. It was confusion mixed with something deeper. Fear, hope, and disbelief. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. His eyes followed her every step. She reminded him of someone, not in her face, but in her energy, her laughter. A shadow of a memory came rushing back. Before we talk about the moment he moved toward her, picture this. A powerful man standing still while the world moves around him. His mind filled with questions, his heart racing faster than it had in years. Could it be possible? No, it couldn't. And yet, That mark. That impossible mark. He took a slow breath and stepped forward. Every step felt heavy, every heartbeat louder than the music playing in the background. He didn't even realize his assistant was calling his name, asking if he was okay. He couldn't answer. He just walked toward her. The girl had stopped running now. She was looking at an ice cream cart, her eyes full of excitement. Her hair glowed under the sun, just like someone else's once did. 6 years ago, he watched her, closely, afraid to blink. She looked up and smiled, not at him, but at the vendor. Still, that smile hit him like lightning. It was familiar. Too familiar. Before we talk about their first meeting, it's important to know what was happening inside him. This wasn't just curiosity, it was like a door inside him. It opened one he'd locked long ago. Every memory of that night came back in flashes. The laughter, te voice, the way she looked at him before she disappeared. He remembered her touch, her warmth, her scent, faint, like flowers in rain. He hadn't thought about her in years, and yet now, standing before this child, it all came rushing back. I felt DC. He wanted to know who the girl was. He wanted to ask, but how? He couldn't just walk up to her, not without a reason. He stood still, watching as she bought her ice cream, her tiny hands holding it with delight. A drop fell on her wrist, right on the birthmark. She laughed and wiped it away, and he saw it again. Clear at this time, the same curve, the same shape. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. Before we talk about how he finally approached her, let's pause in that moment. The world was loud around him. Cameras flashing, people talking, but he couldn't hear any of it. All he heard was the beat of his own heart. He didn't know whether to smile or cry. He didn't know if he should believe what he was seeing. He remembered his mother once told him, "Some marks don't just run in families. They run through destiny." He used to laugh at that. Now, he wasn't laughing. Because that little girl, the one with his birthmark, was standing right there, a few feet away, and suddenly, everything he had buried for 6 years began to surface. His mind whispered a name he hadn't said aloud since that night. Her name. The girl he lost. Could this child be hers? He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but his instincts screamed the truth before logic could argue. He took another step forward. Slow, unsure, afraid. She turned, maybe sensing someone looking at her. For a brief second, their eyes met. Her eyes wide, bright, full of innocence. And yet, there was something hauntingly familiar about them. He felt his throat tighten. Golden. They. Breathe. Properly. Every part of him wanted to ask her who she was, where she came from. But before he could speak, someone called her name. A woman's voice. Soft, clear. He froze again. That voice, he knew it. Before we talk about that voice and the storm it brings, remember this moment because it's where everything changes. It's where logic ends and destiny begins. The mark on that little girl's wrist wasn't just a coincidence. It was a message, one written 6 years ago, waiting to be read. And now, he was finally reading it. Before we talk about the truth that finally comes out, we need to see how his quiet suspicion begins. It starts with a feeling, soft, uncertain, but powerful enough to keep him awake that night. He couldn't stop thinking about the girl with the birthmark. Her smile, her laugh, her eyes that looked too familiar. The more he tried to convince himself it was a coincidence, the more his heart disagreed. He had faced corporate wars, billion-dollar deals, betrayals, but this feeling was something different. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't logic. It was instinct. And for the first time in years, instinct was louder than reason. Before we talk about the steps he took, understand his mindset. He didn't want to appear desperate or irrational. He told himself it was just curiosity. That simply wanted to know who the girl was. But, deep down, he already knew curiosity wasn't the reason. It was hope. Fragile, but alive. That night, he sat in his study, staring at the city lights outside his window. He thought about every detail he could remember. The charity event. The laughter, the woman's voice calling the girl. That voice, it had cracked something inside him. He was sure he had heard it before. Years ago. That same softness, that same calm tone. Before we talk about what he discovered, let's look at how he began. He didn't hire investigators right away. He didn't want to involve anyone. This was personal. Tu personal. He began with small, careful steps, quiet questions, gentle curiosity. He called one of the event organizers the next day. Asked casually about the families who attended. He made it sound like a business inquiry about community connections, sponsorship follow-ups. But inside, he was searching for a name, the name that could end his doubts. It didn't take long for a few details to surface. The organizer mentioned the local families, the volunteers, the children who had performed, and then, almost casually, he mentioned her. The single mother who helped with the event decorations. He remembered that name. It hit him like lightning. The same name from 6 years ago. Before we talk about how he reacted, imagine what that moment felt like. A rush of memories. A single night returning to life. He didn't know whether to be happy or terrified. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and whispered her name again, softly, almost afraid to hear it out loud. He didn't rush to see her. Not yet. He needed to be sure about everything. He told himself, maybe it's not her. Maybe it's someone with the same name. But even as he said it, he didn't believe his own words. The truth was forming quietly, piece by piece. Before we talk about what he does next, picture his new routine. He still went to work, still attended meetings, still signed papers and gave orders, but his mind was elsewhere. Half of him was in the office. The other half was chasing a ghost from the past. He started driving by the area near that park. At first, he told himself it was coincidence, just a shortcut. But his heart knew better. He slowed down every time he passed. Once, he even saw the little girl again, walking beside a woman, holding her hand. He couldn't see her face clearly, but he didn't need to. Her posture, her steps, even the way she tilted her head, it was her. It was the same woman he'd been searching for in his memories. He didn't approach them. Not yet. He was careful. He wanted to learn before he acted. So, he began to ask around quietly. His assistant made a few discreet inquiries, thinking it was about a local sponsorship. Soon, small pieces of truth started coming together. Before we talk about what he found, listen to what people said. The neighbors described her kindly. They said she was hardworking, polite, always busy. She lived a simple life with her daughter, a single mother. No one had ever seen the father. No one even knew who he was. Those words hit him harder than he expected. He remembered that night again, the goodbye, the way she left without looking back. Had she known? Had she kept it from him on purpose? Or had she thought he wouldn't care? The questions were endless, and each one cut deeper than the last. Before we talk about his next move, it's important to understand what he was feeling. He wasn't angry. Not yet. He was torn between disbelief and longing, between guilt and hope. He didn't know whether to confront her or to stay silent. It was afraid of what the truth might confirm. He started watching from a distance, not out of control, but out of confusion. He saw the little girl again, at a bookstore, at a school gate. Each time, his heart reacted the same way. The more he saw her, the more certain he became. She was his reflection, his eyes, his smile, even the way she frowned when thinking. There was no denying it anymore. Before we talk about the moment he decides to face her, see how fate plays with silence. He found himself caring about small details. The way the girl laughed, the way her mother smiled at her. He began noticing the things he'd never noticed before. Love in small gestures, warmth in simple moments. It reminded him of everything he had missed in his own life. He started wondering how different things might have been if he hadn't let that night slip away. He was a man who never believed in fate. He believed in control, in plans, in results. But now, he felt something stronger than logic, something that connected dots he didn't even know existed. A single night, a single mark, a single child. It couldn't all be coincidence. Fate was real, and it was speaking directly to him. Before we move to the next part of his journey, let's stay here in the space between suspicion and truth. He's not ready to confront her yet, but he's no longer blind. The signs are all around him. Every whisper, every glance, every instinct tells him that the past has returned. But this time, he won't let it vanish again. Before we talk about the truth that finally breaks through, we have to step into the moment they meet again. Face to face after 6 silent years. It begins quietly, not like a movie scene, but like life catching up when you least expect it. He doesn't rush. He plans carefully. He tells himself it's just a conversation. But inside, his heart is louder than reason. He arranges the meeting through a charity contact. A formal reason, a business excuse. Nothing personal. That's the only way he can be sure she'll come. He rehearses what he'll say, but the words keep changing in his mind. How do you talk to someone who once disappeared with half your soul? Before we talk about the first words they share, imagine the silence that fills the room before she arrives. He stands by the window, his reflection blending with the city lights. He adjusts his tie, not because he cares, but because he's nervous. For years, he's led boardrooms and conferences, but this makes his hands shake. The door opens softly. He turns, and there she is, the same eyes, the same calmness, though time has added a quiet strength to her face. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The air between them feels heavy with things unsaid. Before we talk about what they say, feel what they feel, her heart is racing too. She didn't expect to see him again, not like this. She holds her bag tightly, hiding her trembling fingers. She tells herself to stay calm, to keep control, to not let him see the truth in her eyes, because one look might give everything away. He greets her politely. His voice sounds steady, but it's forced. She smiles faintly, answering with measured words. They talk about the event, about work, about safe topics that mean nothing. It's all surface. But under every sentence, tension grows. Slow, quiet, unavoidable. Before we talk about what really brings the air to a stillness, let's notice his eyes. He studies her carefully, the way she looks down when nervous, the way her voice softens when she talks about her daughter. He listens to every detail. Every word feels like a clue. He asks one question at a time, softly, carefully. He doesn't want to scare her away. He asks where she lives, how old her daughter is, what school she goes to. She answers, but her eyes avoid his. She knows where these questions are going, and she's not ready. Before we talk about how she reacts, look at him for a moment. This man, who once ruled boardrooms with certainty, now feels small, uncertain, almost fragile. He's afraid to hope, afraid to be wrong, afraid to be right. He glances at her hand. There's no ring. He glances at her face. There's no sign of regret, but there is something else. A quiet pain. She tries to stay calm. She tells herself to keep it together, but she can feel his gaze cutting through the layers of silence she built over the years. Her answers get shorter. Her breathing gets quicker. Her heart keeps reminding her of the secret she's held for so long. Before we talk about the girl, we need to see how that silence begins to break. He doesn't accuse her. He doesn't demand anything. He simply asks your daughter. How old is she? The question lands softly, but it feels like thunder. She hesitates ere lips part, but no words come out. Her eyes flicker, a sign of truth fighting to stay hidden. She finally answers, quietly. 6. And in that one word, his world shifts again. He blinks, trying not to react too much. 6. Exactly, 6. The number that had been haunting him since that night. Before we talk about what happens next, remember the girl. The one who called him Sir. She doesn't know yet. To her, he's just another man, her mother knows. She smiles politely, shy but curious. She plays quietly in the corner, humming a tune, unaware of the storm building between two adults. He glances at her, and once again, His eyes find the mark. That small, familiar mark that refuses to let him rest. He can't look away. It calls to him, louder than logic, louder than fear. It's not just on her arm. It's written in her smile, in her energy, in the way she looks at the world. He feels it, the unspoken connection between them. Something real, something undeniable. Before we talk about her mother's reaction, feel the pressure in the air. She sees where he's looking. She knows what he's thinking. Her hands tighten. She clears her throat, trying to change the topic. But it's too late. He already knows. He can see it in her silence. He can hear it in her shaking voice. He doesn't say anything yet. He stays calm, composed, almost gentle, but his heart is no longer calm. It's beating too fast, too loud. He wants to ask, "Why didn't you tell me?" He wants to shout, "She's mine, isn't she?" But instead, he breathes. He waits, because some truths are too heavy to rush. Before we talk about the moment that truth finally comes out, we stay in this pause. The quiet before everything changes. The girl giggles, innocent and unaware. The mother avoids his eyes, trapped between fear and guilt, and he stands there, torn between anger and awe, unable to take his eyes off that mark. The mark that once meant nothing, now means everything. The mark that connects 3 lives, 1 secret, 1 heart, 1 destiny. And even as they part ways that day, the truth doesn't stay silent anymore. It follows them, like a shadow that refuses to disappear. Before we talk about the truth that finally comes out, we have to return to the silence that comes before it. That heavy, unbearable silence, where both hearts know, but no one dares to speak. Days pass. He can't sleep. He tries to work, but the image of that little girl, her laugh, her eyes, that small mark keeps pulling him back. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees her face, and every time he opens them, he feels the emptiness of not knowing. He tells himself to let it go. He tells himself that maybe he's wrong, but fate doesn't let go that isle soe decide. He needs the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Before we talk about how he asks, picture this moment. He stands outside her small house, far from the city lights, far from his world of glass towers and boardrooms. The night is quiet, but his heart is loud. He knocks softly. El Mustafrai. She opens the door. The surprise on her face says it all. She wasn't expecting him, but maybe a part of her knew he would come. He doesn't waste time on polite words. He looks at her and says, "I just need to know." His voice trembles, even though he tries to hide it. She looks down. She's been preparing for this moment for 6 years, yet it still feels too soon. The truth she's been guarding is now standing at her doorstep, asking to be set free. Before we talk about her answer, let's feel what's happening inside her. She's tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of lying to her daughter, to him, to herself. Every time the little girl asked about her father, she changed the subject. Every time the girl smiled, she saw him in that smile. The weight of that secret became too heavy to carry alone. So she takes a breath and says softly, "You already know, don't you?" He doesn't move. He doesn't speak. He just watches her eyes, searching for honesty, for hope, for confirmation. She steps aside and lets him in. The girl is asleep in her room, a small blanket covering her tiny frame. He looks around the drawings on the wall, the photos on the shelf. And then he sees it. A photo. Old, slightly faded. Of him. Not recent, but from years ago. The night everything began. He picks it up slowly, his hands trembling. She doesn't stop him. She just stands there, watching his heart finally meet the truth. Before we talk about what he says, let's pause at this picture. It's not proof on paper. It's proof in emotion, in history, in the quiet bond that never died. But he still needs to be sure. Not because he doubts her, but because he can't believe life could be this cruel or this kind. So, he whispers, "Let's do a test. She nods slowly. There's no fight, no argument, just tired acceptance. Because sometimes the truth needs a witness. Before we talk about the result, we sit with them in that waiting room. Two people who once shared a night of magic, now waiting for science to confirm what their hearts already know. He taps his fingers on the chair, restless. She stays quiet, staring at the floor. Every minute feels longer than a lifetime. When the nurse finally walks in, their hearts freeze. The envelope is small, too small to hold something so big. He opens it slowly. His eyes move across the paper, and then they stop. No words, no sound, just silence, the kind that speaks louder than anything else. The truth is there, printed clearly. The girl is his. Before we talk about what he feels, imagine the flood inside him. His hands shake. His breath catches. His chest tightens, not from pain, but from the weight of everything he's just realized. The years lost, the moments missed, the birthdays, the laughter, the small I love yous he never got to hear. All gone, yet somehow, all still waiting for him. He looks up at her, eyes full of 100 emotions: shock, anger, relief, love, confusion. He doesn't shout, he doesn't blame. He just whispers, "Why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes fill with tears before she can answer. She turns away, but her voice breaks as she says, "I wanted to, but you were gone. You had your world. And I had her." Before we talk about his next move, we have to feel what's inside her words. It wasn't selfishness. It was fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of breaking his perfect life with an imperfect truth. She raised their daughter alone, with strength, with love, with quiet sacrifice. She never wanted pity. She just wanted peace. He walks closer. No anger now. Just pain, quiet and deep. He touches her shoulder gently. For years, he's built empires. But right now, he realizes the only thing he truly built that mattered was her. And he left it behind. Before we talk about what happens when he sees the girl again, imagine the shift. He goes to her room. The door creaks softly. She's awake now, sitting up, rubbing her eyes. When she sees him, she smiles innocent, bright, unaware of everything that just changed. He kneels beside her bed, not knowing what to say. She tilts her head, curious. He studies her face, the eyes, the small scar near her eyebrow, the mark on her arm. Every detail feels like coming home. He smiles softly, voice breaking. "Hey, remember me?" She nods shyly. "You're the man from the office," she says. He laughs, and it sounds like the first real laugh he's had in years. He looks at her mother, then back at her, and finally says the words he's been holding in his chest since the beginning. "I'm your father." Before we talk about her reaction, let the silence hold for a moment. The little girl blinks, processing. Her small voice trembles. "Really?" He nods, eyes wet. She reaches out, touching his hand, small fingers on a shaking palm. And in that one touch, the years of distance disappear. No test, no proof. Just connection, real and raw. Her mother watches quietly, tears sliding down her face, not of regret, but of release. The truth that once felt like a storm now feels like sunlight breaking through the clouds. And as he holds the little girl for the first time, his daughter, the world finally feels right again. Before we talk about what this moment changes for all three of them, stay here in this breath, this heartbeat, this fragile peace. Because sometimes truth doesn't arrive with shouts or fireworks. Sometimes it just arrives quietly and lands like thunder in the heart. He sees the girl as his own, and nothing in his world will ever be the same again. Before we talk about how life moves forward, we have to sit in the silence that follows the truth. Because truth doesn't come alone. It comes with feelings too heavy for words. The air between them feels different now. Quiet, but full. Raw, but real. He stands there, still trying to breathe. Every second feels like a movie running backward in his mind. 6 years of memories that never happened. 6 birthdays he missed. 6 candles he never lit. He feels it all at once. Guilt. Shock. Joy. Regret. Hope. It's too much for one heart, yet somehow it all fits inside his chest. Before we talk about his next words, picture him looking at the little girl. She's smiling, but she doesn't fully understand. Her world just changed. But she's too young to know how big that change is. She tilts her head and asks the simplest question. Where were you all this time? He can't answer right away. His throat closes. His eyelids burn. What can he say to a question like that? He kneels down so he can see her eye to eye. He tries to smile, but his voice cracks. I didn't know, he says softly, but now that I do, I'll never leave again. The words are simple, but heavy. A promise built from pain. Before we talk about her mother's reaction, let's feel what's inside her. She stands behind them, hands trembling slightly. For years, she was the only one, the only provider, the only protector, the only parent. Now, he's back, and even though part of her is relieved, another part is terrified. Because when you've built a world alone, it's hard to let someone else walk into it. She looks at him. This man she once loved, the one she ran from, the one who now stands here trying to piece together everything he lost. There's no anger left, just exhaustion. She says quietly, you don't get to erase the years, you know. He nods, understanding. I'm not trying to, he replies. I just want to be part of what's left. Before we talk about what happens next, we have to feel the tension, not of hate, but of healing. Because forgiveness isn't instant. It's fragile. It starts small, like a spark, and it grows only if both hearts let it. He feels guilty, deeply, completely, for not searching harder, for not questioning fate, for moving on while she was raising his child. Every success, every award, every deal now feels hollow compared to the moment he almost missed forever. The little girl breaks the silence again. She walks up to him, holding a small toy. It's okay, she says, smiling. You can come to my school day tomorrow. And that one line, that small, innocent offer, undoes him completely. He laughs through tears, nodding, unable to speak. Sometimes, forgiveness comes from the smallest heart. Before we talk about his promise, imagine him sitting there, beside her tiny table, covered in crayons and papers. He picks up one drawing, 3 stick figures, holding hands. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small. He points and asks, who's this? She grins. That's you. He freezes, then smiles. Even before she knew he was her father, she somehow always felt it. He promises her softly, I'll be there for every drawing from now on. It's not a grand speech. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, sincere, real. Because love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stays. Before we talk about how she responds, let's stay in this quiet space where 2 adults are learning to forgive, and 1 child is teaching them how. Her mother wipes a tear from her face, trying to hide it. He sees it, but doesn't mention it. Instead, he says, you did everything alone, and you did it perfectly. She shakes her head, half smiling. I did what I had to. He answers, and now I'll do what I should have. The moment hangs between them. Fragile, beautiful, uncertain. There's still pain, still distance, still fear. But beneath all that, something new begins to grow. Understanding. Before we talk about how they face the world next, remember this healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in pieces. In small words. In long silences. In simple promises like, I'll do better. And that's exactly what he says, looking at both of them. His eyes soft, his voice steady. I can't fix the past, he whispers, but I can build the future. No one claps. No one cheers. But in that small room, 3 hearts finally begin to breathe again. Before we talk about happy endings, we have to talk about something truer. The slow, quiet process of healing. Because not everything fixes in a day. Some wounds don't close fast. Some hearts need time to learn how to trust again. Ich knows this. She knows this. Even the little girl feels it, though she doesn't have the words for it yet. The truth changed their lives. But rebuilding will take something more. Patience. Consistency. Presence. Before we talk about how that begins, imagine the next morning. The sun rises over the same city, but it feels new somehow. For the first time in years, he isn't thinking about business calls or stock numbers. He's thinking about breakfast. He's thinking about school drop. He's thinking about her smile. He shows up, not with gifts, not with promises, but with time. He learns how to braid her hair, clumsy at first, but he lasts through it. He learns to listen when she talks about her day. He learns to sit quietly, to be there, not as a CEO, but as a father. Before we talk about how that feels, we see her watching him from across the room. The woman who once left without a word now watches him build moments she never thought she'd see. Part of her wants to believe it'll last. Another part still fears it might fade. But every day he comes back. Every day, he keeps his word. And slowly, she starts to trust the rhythm of his footsteps at her door. They start small. Walks in the park. Talks on the porch. Tiny routines that feel like threads, weaving their broken story back together. The girl begins to draw new pictures, 3 stick figures again, but this time with hearts above them. He sees them on the fridge, and every time, his chest tightens with quiet gratitude. Before we talk about how his world changes, let's see how he learns to balance both. At work, he's still the same. Confident, powerful, respected. But his phone now has a different priority. Instead of checking stock updates, he checks school times. Instead of board meetings, he plans picnics. He's still the CEO, but now, he's also a dad. It isn't easy. Some days, he feels like he's making up for a lifetime in small moments. Some nights, he sits alone thinking about how much he missed the first words, the first steps, the bedtime stories he never told. But instead of drowning in regret, he turns that pain into purpose. He tells himself, I can't change the years I lost, but I can make every next one count. Before we talk about how she reacts to this new version of him, imagine their small family dinners. Not fancy, not loud, just simple meals, laughter, and warmth. He helps wash dishes. She teases him for not knowing how to dry them properly. The girl sits between them, humming a tune she learned at school. It's not perfect, but it's peaceful, and that peace feels like the biggest victory of all. He doesn't push her to forgive him completely. He knows forgiveness isn't a door, it's a path. So he walks it slowly, one honest step at a time. He's gentle with her boundaries. He doesn't talk about the past much. He just proves, quietly, that he's not going anywhere again. Before we talk about what happens months later, we have to feel this new rhythm. Mornings start with laughter. Afternoons with small surprises. Nights with simple good nights. 3 words that used to mean nothing, now mean everything. He's there at her school event, clapping from the front row. She spots him in the crowd and waves, proudly shouting, "That's my dad." No. No, nah. Milu, no. The look on his face, pride, joy, disbelief, says more than words ever could. For the first time, he feels complete. Not as a businessman, not as a man who got everything, but as someone who finally found what truly matters. Before we talk about her, the woman who once hid her pain behind strength, we see how she begins to change too. Her shoulders relax more these days. Her smile comes easier. She doesn't look over her shoulder as much, because deep down, she knows she's not carrying the weight alone anymore. He doesn't try to fix her past. He just stands beside her, steady and quiet. Sometimes they talk about that night, the one that started it all. Sometimes they don't, but the silence between them now isn't heavy. It's calm. It's full of understanding. Before we talk about how far they've come, there's one last picture to hold on to. It's a small moment. One that doesn't make headlines or stories, but matters more than all of them. The three of them are sitting under a tree, somewhere outside the city. The girl is drawing again. Her mother is reading, and he's just watching them. No rush, no chaos, just peace. He takes a deep breath, feeling something he hasn't felt in years. Home, not a place, not a building, not an office, but a feeling. And in that moment, everything makes sense. The mistakes, the distance, the time lost, it all led here. Before we talk about what the future might hold, we stay in this moment. Quiet, hopeful, imperfectly perfect. Because life rarely gives second chances. But when it does, it doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for effort. He shows up every day. He learns to be patient. He learns to listen. He learns that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about small, steady presence. She learns to let him in. The girl learns what it feels like to be loved by both her parents. And together, they learn how to live, one day at a time. Before we talk about how it all fits together, remember their story isn't about magic anymore. It's about growth. It's about two people who made mistakes, and one child who brought light back into their world. It's about starting over, not perfectly, but sincerely. He doesn't need to prove anything now. She doesn't need to hide anymore. And the little girl, with that small birthmark that changed everything, just laughs, carefree, happy, whole. Before we move forward, stay here in this small, beautiful truth that sometimes the best endings are the ones that look like beginnings. Because this time, he's not letting go. And this time they're all walking together into a future they're finally ready to build. Before we talk about the end of this story, we need to talk about what it truly means. Because some stories don't just end, they echo. They stay with you. They remind you that life can change in a single night. A single night. A single choice. A single moment that can rewrite the years that follow. He never planned it. She never expected it. But fate has strange plans. It hides answers inside accidents. It connects souls through time. It waits quietly until two people are ready to meet again. Before we talk about fate, think about this. How many times have you walked away from something, believing it was over, only to realize later that it was only waiting for you to return? That's what happened to him, to her, to their daughter. A night that seemed like a memory became a lifetime of meaning. A mistake turned into a miracle. He thought power was everything. She thought love was too fragile. But in the end, they both learned the same truth. What's meant for you never truly leaves. It might take years, it might take pain, but it finds you, sometimes in the form of a second chance, sometimes in the eyes of a little girl with your birthmark. Before we talk about forgiveness, let's ask something deeper. How much time can love survive? 6 years? 10? A lifetime? This story says as long as there's even a spark, love remembers its way home. He forgave himself for not knowing. She forgave him for not being there. And a child, she forgave them both without even trying. Because children don't measure love by years. They measure it by presence. Warmth. By how safe they feel when someone says, "I'm here now." Before we talk about destiny, let's understand this. Not all broken things need fixing. Some just need holding. And sometimes, the people we think are lost forever are only waiting behind one small decision, one knock at a door, one word of truth, one act of courage. A single night started it. A secret kept it. A mark revealed it. And love healed it. Before we talk about what to take away from this story, ask yourself this. Who would you forgive? For lost time? A friend who disappeared? A parent who didn't show up? A love that came back too late? Would you open the door again? If fate gave you one more chance? Because maybe, like him, you're not too late. Maybe there's still someone waiting to hear your voice. Maybe there's still a story in your life, waiting for its ending. Before we talk about how his story touched millions, remember Ty's forgiveness isn't weakness. It's strength. It's what turns pain into peace. It's what turns distance into connection. And it's what turns strangers into family again. He learned that power means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. She learned that silence can't protect love forever. And the girl, she taught them both that love doesn't need perfection. It only needs truth. Before we talk about you, take a moment to feel what you've heard. The mistakes, the loss, the rediscovery, the quiet healing. Because somewhere inside this story, there's a piece of every one of us. The part that wishes for one more chance. The part that still believes that maybe, somehow, love can find its way back. A single night. A life changed. A family rebuilt. It sounds like a fairy tale, but maybe it's just life. Written by fate, one imperfect line at a time. Before we go, let this question stay with you. If life gave you another chance to make things right, would you take it? Would you forgive? Would you believe again? Tell us in the comments. Who would you forgive for lost time? And what would you do if fate came knocking on your door? Before we end this story, take a breath. If it touched your heart, don't let it end here. Hit the like button. It helps us bring more stories like this to life. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys like this one. Every story we tell hides a truth, a tear, a spark of hope, just like yours. Share this video with someone who loves heartfelt tales and second chances, because sometimes one story can remind someone that love always finds its way back.